Our next speaker is Distinguished Professor of Atmospheric Science at Penn State, also in the United States, and he has pioneered techniques to find patterns in the climate data. He has also found himself fighting not only climate denial, but also doomsday thinking when it comes to the climate crisis. His most recent book, one of many, is entitled The New Climate War, The Fight to Take Back Our Planet. It's a great pleasure to welcome Michael Mann.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today at this important event. And I have a presentation which should be coming up shortly. There we are. Okay. Well, thanks again. So I'm going to talk about opportunities, the opportunities that we have to address the climate crisis, but also some of the challenges that still remain. And this is indeed the focus of my new book, How to Win the New Climate War, which I'm delighted to say is now available auf Deutsch. It's been translated into German. And the message of this book really is that we are, as Secretary Granholm alluded to, we are so close. This is our moment. This is our time. But we do have some obstacles in our way, and we need to recognize them if we are going to rise to the challenge. First, just a little bit about the basic science here. I'm not going to show the projections of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I'm going to show you some projections from 1982 in a document that was unearthed, an internal document from ExxonMobil. This is an estimate by ExxonMobil's own scientists in the early 1980s of the increase in the concentration of carbon pollution, of carbon dioxide, and the resulting warming that would be expected in the future. And they predicted back in 1982 both the increase in carbon dioxide and the warming that would result. Now, they were able to make that prediction because they were fairly confident that we would remain addicted to fossil fuels and that we would elevate the levels of CO2 in the atmosphere up to nearly 420 parts per million. And part of why we did that was because ExxonMobil and other fossil fuel companies, rather than coming public when they knew that we had a problem on our hands, instead engaged in a multi-million-dollar campaign to discredit the science of climate change, to discredit independent scientists who had actually come to the same conclusions as their own scientists. And this is the so-called climate wars that I've alluded to. Now, if we had acted decades ago, when we knew we had a problem, when ExxonMobil and other fossil fuel companies knew we had a problem, it would have been a fairly straightforward matter to bring our carbon emissions down in time to avoid a catastrophic 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. What decades of inaction have bought us, unfortunately, is a much steeper challenge. We need to bring our carbon emissions down far more quickly now. That's the opportunity cost of decades of inaction due to the war on climate action. The impacts, we don't need to use our imagination anymore. They're playing out in real time in our headlines, in our social media feeds, on our television screens, unprecedented heat waves and wildfires and floods and superstorms. In fact, this year, we saw the hottest temperature ever reliably recorded on this planet in Death Valley, California, 130 degrees Fahrenheit. And while wildfires were blazing out west, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, we witnessed the most active hurricane season on record in the Atlantic Basin. This is the face of climate change. It's no longer subtle. It's staring us in the face. So this is what 1 degree Celsius of warming has done. Imagine 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. If we fail to address this challenge, we will witness ever worse impacts that go well behind anything that we have seen in the historical record. That's the bad news. The good news is there is still time to do something about it, to avoid those impacts. But we have encountered this challenge. Efforts by fossil fuel companies and those promoting their agenda to discredit the science. I've come up against those efforts in my own work, in my own outreach on climate change. But here's the thing. The impacts of climate change have become so obvious to the person on the street that it just isn't credible anymore to deny the reality of climate change. And so we've largely seen an end to that assault on the basic scientific evidence, if you like, the old climate war. But polluters haven't given up. The forces of inaction, or the inactivists, as I call them in the book, haven't given up. They've just turned to a whole new array of tactics in their efforts to delay action, to prevent this transition away from fossil fuels. It consists of soft denial. Well, climate change may be real, but it's not a problem. It's been overblown. It's been exaggerated. We can continue to burn fossil fuels. No problem. Or we'll just adapt. We don't have to reduce those carbon emissions. We'll just adapt to the changes that have come and the additional changes that are in store. Or we will geoengineer our way out of the problem. Bill Gates has a book out now about climate change, and he in fact does advocate for geoengineering, other massive interventions with our planetary system in an effort to somehow offset the effect of carbon pollution, the warming effect of carbon pollution. And yet there are potential unintended consequences if we go down that road. We also see deflection. We don't need a price on carbon. We don't need subsidies for renewable energy. We don't need to stop developing new fossil fuel infrastructure. The solution is just on individuals. It's just on us. We just need to change our diet. We just need to change our way of travel. It's an effort to deflect attention away from the needed systemic changes, the needed policy solutions. Individual action is important, and we should all do those things we can to minimize our impact on the environment and the climate. But individual action alone isn't going to be adequate. We need systemic change. We see efforts to divide the climate advocacy community by attacking some of our leading thinkers, our opinion leaders, thought leaders, our more prominent advocates, attacking them, attempting to discredit them as hypocrites because of their personal behavior, whether they fly, what their diet is, how much electricity they use. And it's been quite effective. There is, in fact, quite a division now within the climate community. You have prominent progressives like Michael Moore who are now attacking renewable energy, the primary solution to the climate crisis that we have available. And that message, ironically, is trumpeted by conservative media organizations and fossil fuel front groups. Again, creating division within the community so that we don't act with one voice demanding change. And then there's doomism, doom and despair. If we come to believe that it's too late to do anything about the problem, and it's not, that potentially leads us down the same path of inaction as outright denial. And the forces of inaction, they don't care about the path you take, they just care about the destination. They want you disengaged. And whether it's because you deny climate change is real or you don't think it's possible to do anything about it, that puts you in a position of disengagement, and you're not out there demanding change. So what do we need to do? We need to convey both the urgency and the agency. Yes, we have to act now. Dangerous climate change, by some measure, has already arrived. But there is agency. We can prevent the worst impacts of climate change if we act boldly now. We know what the solution is. We don't need a miracle, Bill Gates. We already have the solutions. We just have to deploy them. We have to scale them up. And then finally, we are seeing carbon emissions come down. During this past year, because of the pandemic, they came down 7%. Much of that was due to the social distancing and the lockdown policies, but some of that was due to the continued decarbonization of the global economy. We are seeing carbon emissions start to bring them down. The challenge now is to keep bringing them down by 7% every year for the next 10 years. And personal individual change alone isn't going to do it. We need those systemic changes. We need those policies that will encourage the rapid decarbonization of our economy. I'm optimistic that we can do this. We have a shift in the political winds. We already heard about that. The Biden administration is acting boldly. The U.S. is now once again displaying leadership, bringing the world community together. The U.S. is back, and it's ready once again to lead, and that has huge implications for our effort to address this crisis over the ensuing years. And the youth climate movement, the fact that our children have recentered this conversation where it always needed to be, about our ethical obligation not to destroy this planet for future generations. That's the way we need to think about this problem. That's the urgency. That's why we have to act now. And I believe we will. Thank you.
Michael Mann, thank you very, very much.